When we think about legacy, it's easy to jump to money or, I don't know, big accomplishments. But the real stuff, the stuff that lasts, it's our values. The problem is, they're kind of fragile. They can just fade away if we're not intentional. So today, we're going to talk about how to pass them on purpose.
So that brings us to the big question, right? If the things that truly last, our integrity, our kindness, our work ethic, if that's what we want to leave behind, how do you make sure they don't just get lost in the shuffle?
Because here's the tough part. Values don't survive by accident. They just don't. If you're not actively passing them forward, they fade, and they get replaced, usually by the loudest things in our culture. Convenience, shortcuts, whatever gets you that instant gratification.
All right, so let's get into this section. We're going to talk about why good values can just disappear. And it usually starts with this one big assumption that most of us make, and honestly, it's kind of a dangerous one.
You've probably heard this or even thought it yourself. Hey, if I just live a good life, people will see that and pick it up. It makes sense, right? This idea that if you're a good example, your kids, your team, they'll just absorb it, like osmosis. And it's a really nice thought, but hope is not a strategy.
And here's why that hope usually doesn't work out. The world is just louder. Its lessons are all about taking the easy way out. Shortcuts get rebranded as life hacks, and convenience feels like it's more important than character. So without a real intentional plan, all those good values, they just get drowned out by the noise.
And look, this stuff really matters to people. There was a study where when you ask people what they want to be remembered for, almost 70% say it's about the memories and the values they shared. Career success, only like 9%. Deep down, we all know what's really important.
So what's the takeaway here? It's simple. If you want your legacy to last, you can't just rely on hope. You need a structure. You need a system.
Okay, so that brings us to the main idea of this whole explainer. It's a really simple shift in thinking, but it changes everything. And it's this: values are caught, not taught. So what does that actually mean? Well, think about it. Taught is all the stuff we say. It's the lectures, the rules, the explanations. It's pretty passive. But caught, that's all about what people see. It's active. It's about observation, seeing things happen over and over again, and importantly, seeing the consequences of those actions.
I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? You can talk about integrity until you're blue in the face, but if your actions don't line up, your words are just noise. Your behavior, that's the real message. Everything else is just commentary.
And this is such a great way to think about it. People don't copy what you say is important, they copy what you protect. So ask yourself, what do you protect? Is it family dinner time, no matter what? Is it your commitment to being honest, even when it hurts? Your standard of quality? Whatever you defend, whatever's non-negotiable, that's the value that people see. That's what they'll copy.
Okay, so if we agree that values are caught through action, the next logical question is, how do we make them visible? How do we make them tangible? Well, that's what this next section is all about. Let's get into the playbook. We're going to break this down into 3 key areas where values really come to life. First, in your decisions. Second, in your rituals. And third, in letting natural consequences play out. So let's start with decisions. Look, a value is basically just an opinion until it costs you something. It's when people see you make a tough choice, like choosing integrity when a shortcut would have been more profitable, or walking away from an easy win because it just wasn't right. That's the lesson. That's when a value becomes real.
Okay, number 2 is rituals. And don't think of anything super formal here. We're talking about consistent everyday patterns. How do you talk about problems in your family or on your team? Is it a blame game or is it collaborative? When someone fails, is it the end of the world or is it a chance to learn? These little repeated behaviors are what turn abstract ideas into actual habits.
And that consistency is the magic ingredient, right? Because when your actions are consistent, they become predictable. And it's that predictability that makes a value transferable. It creates a stable environment where people know what to expect. This leads directly to our third point, letting natural consequences teach the lesson. See, one of the most powerful ways for values to stick is to not shield people from the results of their actions. When effort actually connects to an outcome, when responsibility follows a choice, well, values stop being these abstract concepts. They become real.
All right, let's move on to the next part of the playbook. We've talked about actions. Now let's talk about something just as powerful, stories.
Think about the difference here. Rules. Rules are about compliance.
They tell you what to do. But stories build identity. They explain the why. A rule is forgotten as soon as you're not looking, but a story sticks with you. It gets embedded in your memory because it has emotion.
A perfect example of this is the Passover tradition. The whole thing kicks off with a child asking, "Why is this night different?" And the answer isn't a list of rules. It's a story. It's a story about resilience and freedom that has carried core values across thousands of years. It's incredibly powerful.
So that's the thing to think about. What are the stories that get repeated in your world? The ones about overcoming a tough time or making the right call when it was hard? Those are the stories that act like vessels, carrying your values forward. Okay, for our last section, let's talk about something really important for making a legacy actually last. And that's the idea that values can't be frozen in time. They have to be able to breathe, to evolve. The best, most enduring legacies get this right. The core principles, things like integrity, responsibility, humility, they stay the same. They're rock solid. But how you express them, how you apply them, that has to change with the times. I mean, demonstrating responsibility in the digital age looks a lot different than it did 100 years ago, right? The core stays, but the expression evolves.
And really, that brings us to the whole point of this. Passing on values isn't about control. It's not about forcing people to be just like you. It's about clarity. It's about giving them a compass. If people clearly understand what matters and why it matters, they're equipped to carry those values forward in their own way.
So let's leave it with this final thought. A legacy that needs to be demanded or enforced, it's already failing. The ones that truly survive, the ones that live and breathe for generations, they survive because they're understood. The people carrying them forward don't just know the rules, they know the story. They get the why.